securities. Vivek, is this kind of another on again, off again, or do you think we have at last sort of a floor in what the Trump administration is going to allow, is going to look for, and it's off to the races?
Sure. I think, John, it's hard to make a long-term forecast with any kind of geopolitical event. But for now, I think it's a good sign that there is easing of tensions between U.S. and China. We saw this with the easing of restrictions around chip design EDA software with the approval of the ANSYS deal for Synopsys. So it's very good to see this restriction also being removed potentially for Nvidia products, for AMD products. I think it helps the U.S. AI ecosystem stay involved with the Chinese AI software developers who are innovating very rapidly, like a DeepSeek. And then also, I do think that it helps the U.S. kind of maintain its dominance over the AI technology stack over the next number of years. Because, I think only the U.S. companies really have this nice symbiotic relationship between hardware and software. So by keeping involved with wherever software is being deployed, I do think it helps the U.S. continue to dominate the AI stack. So for now, I think it's very good news. But these things do have a habit of changing on a frequent basis.
We see Supermicro, we see AMD jumping on this, not Dell. Interestingly, to me, what does this signal about the extent to which computer chips are bargaining chips as far as the U.S.'s relationship with China, and who is likely to benefit if they're allowed to continue selling to China?
Sure. I think that, first of all, there is the China benefits are probably more for merchant silicon. That would be Nvidia, that would be AMD. But we might also see benefits flow across to the networking side. That is Broadcom, that is Marvell, to some of their chip design software suppliers, to some of the foundries, to memory. So there is kind of that broadening, right, of benefits. But to kind of put things in perspective, China is about 10 or 15% of AI spending today. We think if these restrictions continue to be at these levels over time, China's contribution to the AI capex is probably going to be only about 5 to 10%. But what is rapidly kind of taking that place is the spending that is being done in all these sovereign locations. Look at the spending that the Middle East is doing. I think that could far exceed the kind of spending that China might be doing in AI. US, of course, continues to spend. Recently, we heard Meta plan these multi-gigawatt data centers, Prometheus and Hyperion, right? Every gigawatt, remember, is a $50 billion of AI opportunity for the likes of Nvidia. So we think that this benefits are spreading globally beyond China.
It also seems that a potential related benefit here is if you're a company that sells a lot into the region, into Singapore, and there might be controversy over where those goods that you're selling end up, is China getting a hold of them? This might take some of that off the table and perhaps some risk for you now.
Yeah, I think it does help to some extent, although these companies have been clear that what they're shipping to Singapore and certain other Asian locations outside of China is really because some of their customers want the billing to be done in those locations. They're not actually, shipping a lot of chips to those locations,
of course,
per se.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I do think, but I agree with your bigger perspective that the more these chips are available globally, I do think it helps to really invigorate the AI ecosystem globally. Right. And I think that continues to, that helps the U.S. to maintain its dominance in this AI stack for a number of years.
I'd love to first get your thoughts just generally on this course reversal about the chip sales to China.
Well, Jensen Huang is supposedly very persuasive. He met with President Trump, and I think he was able to persuade him. And Jensen has been pretty steadfast that American companies need to dominate. And it appears he made a case to President Trump that either he can let Nvidia export these H20 chips, which are less powerful than Blackwell, or Chinese are going to catch up with their, domestic production. And President Trump bought it. And NVIDIA is a winner. So here we are.
NVIDIA certainly is a winner today, hitting yet another all-time high, trading as high as 172.39 today. And we did just see them also hit that $4 trillion valuation last week, a huge milestone. You say you see a path to $8 trillion. What's behind that?
Well, the next big thing. See, when we were saying aggressively buy NVIDIA, it was a $300 million company. Our average price is $12.55 because at that time, people were saying, yeah, maybe AI, maybe not, maybe it's a fad. And, we were convicted AI is real. And now everybody knows what happened, right? So the next big thing is robotics. Two kinds of robots, right? One of the industrial robots that we already see, like in Amazon warehouse and so on. They're going to grow a lot. But we're talking about humanoid robots, right? The kind that Elon Musk shows serving drinks and things like that. So it's a future. We really cannot predict the future for sure, but we have to have some imagination, right? So there are some predictions. If you look through some models that humanoid robots could be as big as a $3 trillion market. That's a huge, huge market. I mean, it could be bigger than cars. And you and I will be having our own robots, right? So the question is, how do you benefit from it? Tesla is obviously one. But then who's going to provide the brains, the chips, the software, and all the infrastructure that is going to take to, not only robots at the edge, but also in the data centers to control all that? And there's nobody else like NVIDIA. NVIDIA is very well advanced. They're providing, end-to-end, both for the data center and on the edge on the robot. A lot of development tools, doing a lot of development. So if robots do become, grow like some are thinking, and I think it can happen, NVIDIA is going to be the prime beneficiary. And it's hard to imagine, the first $4 trillion company, what are you talking about, $8 trillion? We've never had even a $5 trillion company, right? But, I'm old enough to remember, when there was never a $1 trillion company, and I was writing an article, when Apple was, like a $50 billion company, I was writing, say, Apple is going to be a $1 trillion company. And people were saying, what are you talking about? How could that be? Well, now we're talking about Apple at $3 trillion, right? We're buying NVIDIA at $300 million, and now it's $4 trillion. So the key is robotics. Now, the thing about futures is we don't know. It might not happen. So how do we handle it as investors? So the approach we take at our report is we have a core position, which is, again, long from 1255, and then we have been changing buy zones so newer people can buy it higher and higher. So we're going to hold on to that for a long time. And then we have something called what we call a trade around positions. So where we have a shorter term target, stops, risk control. For example, in April, when NVIDIA dipped around $90, we were buying again as a trade around position. So we treat that as a separate position. So I think that's the way to do it, because if NVIDIA does become a $8 trillion company, we'll participate in it. And if it doesn't, so the thing is, the robotics doesn't take off, NVIDIA is probably going to go from $4 trillion to $2 trillion. So we got a risk. So we're controlling the risks on both sides. And you may ask why it may go to $2 trillion. Well, there's a lot of spending going on AI right now. But hyperscalers are going to be done with this spending at some point, and the emphasis is going to shift from training to inference. And inference, we got a strong competitor in AMD. Whereas in training, we really don't have much competitor for NVIDIA. So if robotics don't take off, NVIDIA is going to be cut in half. If robotics take off, NVIDIA is going to double. So that's the bottom line.
The timing of this, Mike, very interesting. What do you make of it?
Well, it's fascinating. This announcement today from NVIDIA in the overnight hours comes less than a week after Jensen Huang sat down with President Donald Trump in Washington at the White House for a closed-door meeting. Now, we don't know what was said in private between the two men, but one thing we do know is that Jensen Huang has been clear in his message that U.S. export controls that have hit his company particularly hard have been a failure and that put U.S. competitiveness at risk. His vision is that if NVIDIA is unable to sell a modified and slowed down version of its AI chip into China, the U.S. will be ceding that market, in essence, to NVIDIA's chief Chinese rival, Huawei Technologies. And that would set the stage potentially, Ed, for Huawei to then start exporting some of that AI technology into other countries where Nvidia would also like to have a toehold and bigger footprint. For Jensen Huang, he really wants the global rollout of AI to be defined by what he calls the American stack of technology rather than the Chinese one, Ed.
I think we need to talk about NVIDIA's business here as well, right? This is the H20 chip. And when they stopped shipping the H20 to China, we were able to quantify the impact, at least to the top line of NVIDIA's business. What do we know will happen in the second half of this year in terms of sales and what business they can claw back?
Well, when they released their results for the first quarter, they did report a $4.5 billion write-down related to those export curbs on the H20 chip. And remember, the H20 chip had been redesigned specifically for the Chinese market to meet earlier rounds of U.S. export curbs that were enacted on national security grounds. Now, the curbs, should they stay in place, would have hit the bottom line even further this coming quarter. They were projecting lost sales of up to $8 billion, but that could all change here, Ed.
There's the trade and business case, and then there's the politics. This was Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent speaking on Bloomberg Television earlier today.
You might say that that was a negotiating chip that we used in Geneva and in London. It was all part of a mosaic. They had things we wanted, we had things they wanted, and we're in a very good place. I expect to meet my Chinese counterpart, the vice premier, in the next few weeks.
Was this a bargaining chip, literally, that played into trade talks between the U.S. and China?
Well, it certainly is something that Chinese officials would have raised during the talks. And for the first time, U.S. officials are indicating that the chip export curbs actually emerged as something in the negotiations. It's unclear where they rank, but certainly it helped the U.S. gain access to those rare earth exports from China that American customers had suddenly found difficulty buying as China began to slow down its sales of those crucial products to automakers and other buyers here.
Write down if somehow you got access to my questions. With this new transition, this course reversal about chip sales to China, obviously Nvidia in the central framework here as a primary provider, and with that secondary chip they were providing, can Nvidia actually meet the demand that they're about to see, or does this potentially open the door for competitors as well?
So we got a design, the chip design itself. We get the software. NVIDIA has the designs, they have the software, no issue. Now, can they produce? So they're dependent on Taiwan Semiconductor, TSM. And so it will come down to, does TSM somewhere get capacity constrained? But the thing is, other than TSM, there's nobody else who can produce these chips. So there's no competitor in that respect. So people are going to have to wait on NVIDIA, and AMD's chips are being produced by TSM too. So TSM could become a bottleneck. And as a result, TSM is probably a great investment here too, especially if it pulls back. Great question, by the way. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, TSM is the linchpin in all of this, of course. Now, I do